Here's my actual trip to be anywhere.
Thank you, Andrew. Last time that happened, I ended up with some charges, I believe. But anyhow, I am grateful to be here tonight. I do have a sobriety date, February 11th, 2014. So by the grace of God, in a couple of weeks, I'll pick up a 2-year chip. I do have a sponsor who has a sponsor, and so on and so forth. So just need to get all that stuff out of the way. But I do thank Steve and Primary Purpose for having me here tonight. So I'll just go ahead and get to it. Born to a couple of great parents. I'm lucky to still have both of them with me today. Had a great childhood. You know, nothing out of the ordinary. Parents didn't drink very often. Of course, my mother had plenty of siblings that kind of took care of that for her. But you know, had a great childhood. You know, no trauma, no abuse, nothing like that. My earliest memory goes back to about 4.5 years old, 5 years old, when I was getting ready to start kindergarten. And for the first couple of weeks of kindergarten, every morning before I would go to school, I would get sick on my stomach. And I remember my mother taking me to the doctor, and I can remember like it was yesterday, I was sitting there on the examining table, and the doctor's talking to my mother, and he's telling me, well, we can't find anything wrong with him. Apparently, he just got a nervous stomach. Well, what I know today was that was panic attacks at 4.5 years old. And I still have those somewhat today. They're more manageable. Hopefully, I won't go into full-blown one tonight standing up here. If I do and I pass out, somebody just jump up here and take over for me. But I ought to be used to passing out in public by now, you'd think. But anyhow, so I've dealt with anxiety all my life. I just want to go ahead and say that and get it out of the way. That way, hopefully, all this anxiety is going to leave me in the next few minutes. But anxiety's been a big part of my life. I eventually started drinking because of it. But like I said, I had a great childhood. Nothing really out of the ordinary. I guess I'll qualify myself just a little bit. Like I said, neither one of my parents really drank that often. My mother had a large family. There was 9 children total, 4 boys and 5 girls. All 4 of my uncles died as a direct result of this disease. All four of them died an alcoholic death. She also had 2 sisters that were alcoholics, and the other 2 sisters married alcoholics. So you know, my family tree is riddled with alcoholism and addiction. So I got this thing honest. As far as I'm concerned, I was born with it. And I guess part of that anxiety is just one of the key character defects that kind of go along with alcoholism. You know, I hear a lot of people say that growing up they didn't feel comfortable around other people. They were not comfortable in their own skin, and that was me. So about the age of 13, well, let me back up a little bit. As far as my uncles are concerned, I spent a lot of time with them. They taught me how to hunt and fish. You know, all school, during the summer vacations I spent with them, any Christmas holidays and so forth I spent with them. So I was around alcohol, although my parents did not drink that much. Around a lot of alcoholic behavior. So I learned how to act like an alcoholic also at a young age. You know, spoiled rotten, basically. Nothing was ever good enough. I always wanted more of everything. But anyhow, I don't know when I took my first drink. I have no idea, but knowing my uncles, it was probably at a fairly young age. But I do remember my first drunk, and that was around the age of 13. And next door neighbor, best friend, my parents were out of town, his parents were out of town. He had an older sister that went and bought us a 6-pack of Coors. And he and I went over in the woods at our little tree fort, and we cracked them open, and he drank one and I drank one. And he ended up getting sick. He didn't feel good, so he went home and went to bed. You know, I can't tell you if I sat there and drank the rest of them or not, but I know I sat there in the woods for a while by myself. And somewhere during that afternoon, this was during the middle afternoon that all this happened, there was a bunch of high school kids having a party down the road. And like I said, my anxiety, was full of anxiety. And I know for me, I would never have gone just walking up to that party. But that's where I ended up. I don't remember a whole lot about that afternoon or that night. I just remember being at that party. I remember being at the bottom of a swimming pool and people having to jump in to come down there and get me, and then they asked me to go home. And so that was the first real drunk that I had. The next morning, I really don't remember what happened the next morning. I don't know if I was sick, hungover, have no idea. But what I do know is something in that can of Coors gave me the courage to go to that party, because I know left up to me, I would not have gone whatsoever. And so I found courage in alcohol. I hear a lot of people say that, and it was definitely that case for me. Coming on up through high school, I guess around my junior year in high school is when the alcoholism really took off. I spent most of my days sitting in the parking lot in my truck drinking, most of the time alone. Every once in a while there may be some other people with me, but the majority of the time I was sitting in my truck by myself in the parking lot all day drinking. I ended up failing my junior year of high school, had to go to summer school to make that up, and but eventually I did make it through high school. After that, made a few attempts at colleges. I think I went to 3 colleges in 3 years. Wasted a lot of my parents' money, and I remember during the amends process, I was talking to my parents, and I just asked them, why did you spend so much money on me trying to send me to these colleges? And I kept failing out of everything. And Dad said, well, we were doing everything we could do to get you out of town. They said, we didn't really care what it cost as long as you were not in Southern Pines, we were okay. I mean, my parents loved me, but they didn't want me around. They had a business here, and of course they didn't want their son out getting arrested every other weekend. So for about 3 or 4 years they kept me, they were sending me away to colleges, but eventually I ended up back at home, 21 years old, living with Mom and Dad. And back up a little bit, I got my first DWI when I was 17, right out of high school. And I got the second one when I was 21. And Dad told me, he said, this is it. We're no longer going to support you. You're going to have to get a job, get out on your own, and so on and so forth. So I got a job at the Pinehurst Hotel as a bartender. No, it wasn't good. That wasn't good. So for about the next 5 years, I drank hard at work. We would get to work in the middle of the afternoon, start drinking as soon as I got to work, drink till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, the whole time during the work, close up, go home, continue to drink, pass out, and get up the next day and do it again. And that carried on for about 6 years. And, eventually, I was getting older. I thought, well, I need to kind of start settling down. And so I talked my parents into letting me go to work for them. And, of course, that was a blessing. It opened up a lot of opportunities for me. Gave me some responsibility, but I was also pretty much my own boss. So, I could, of course, at first it was, things were fairly good. I was doing what I was supposed to do, but that I ended up working for them for about 10 years. And I know towards the end, I was coming to work late and leaving early. That was just the pattern. As long as I would show up for a few hours and do what I needed to do, then my parents pretty much left me alone. But it gave me a lot of free time, and of course the drinking just escalated and got worse and worse. They were actually thinking about selling that part of the business, and I was going to have to move on and find something else to do. And somehow I kind of talked them into retiring and selling me the company, which I was surprised that they did, or I say me. I was married at the time, and so this would have been back in 2000. And I've jumped way ahead. I guess I should say I did get married in '94, have 2 beautiful kids because of that marriage. Got a daughter that's, in my eyes, she's perfect, absolutely perfect. I've got a son that's perfect just like me, unfortunately. He's starting to give me some taste of my own medicine. I always heard people say, just if you give your parents a hard time, just wait till you grow up and it's going to come back on you. It definitely has. Fortunate to say, as of today, he's kind of straightened up, and I'm happy for that. But of course, this disease is going to have to run its course, I'm afraid. But that's a whole nother story. So anyhow, in 2000, purchased the company from my parents. They retired, and things were going good. The money was coming in. I tried to straighten up for a couple of years, did the best I could. Of course, I was still drinking every day. I just would try to keep it down to maybe a pint or something like that, keep it down to a minimum as far as I was concerned. But eventually, with the money coming in and that black hole in my heart, buying material things and just doing anything I could do to try to fill that void that I had, and of course nothing ever worked. And I'll go ahead and get this out of the way. I know this is Alcoholics Anonymous, but when I was 36 years old, I guess it was, 36, 38, so back in 2006, I picked up the drugs and I started smoking crack. And of course that took me to a whole new level. At that point in my life, alcoholism was bad enough. But this is when life really took a turn for the worse for me. And it introduced me to a whole nother world out there I did not know even existed. Very dark, deep places where I ended up going to. So wife and I separated. Thought it might be a good idea for me to get out of town. So I thought, well, I had the bright idea, I'm going to become a truck driver. So I go get my CDL license and I take off over to the road. And that job didn't last too long. I made it about 6 months. Being a truck driver, drinking daily, it really doesn't go hand in hand. The thing that scared me enough, I came out of a blackout one afternoon driving down I-95 in Florida. And the last thing I remember was being in Georgia. And I'm in my underwear. That's all I got. And I'm driving down the interstate, driving this this 80,000-pound machine, deadly machine at that. And I kind of came to my senses, what senses I still had at that point, and I decided, well, this is too dangerous. I'm going to end up killing somebody. So I had enough sense to come off the road. But anyhow, once again, came back into town, living with mom and dad at that point again, and this whole new addiction that I had. Like I said, it took me down hard. That started a revolving door of treatment centers. I went to 5 treatment centers total over the next few years. I was in and out of religious-based programs. I mean, you name it, I tried it. I tried everything but AA. Of course, it's the last thing I tried, the first thing that worked. But, I went to I put myself in a lot of bad situations over those few years, and I'm actually lucky that I'm still here today. I'm kind of running through my story of drinking because I want to get to the good part, which is the sobriety. But I will say that the drinking and the drugs eventually took its toll. There was a couple of attempts at suicide, but I basically ended up on the streets in Fayetteville, living under a bridge. You hear people talk about that, and that's where I ended up. I don't really use the word homeless. I had a place to go. I could have always come back home to my parents. They would have always put me up somewhere if I had asked them to, but I'd have had to give up the drinking, and I just was not willing to do that. So it didn't take me long on the streets. Of course, I wasn't built to be a truck driver, and I definitely wasn't built to live on the streets either. Scared, you're talking about fear, and there's a lot of fear, especially in Fayetteville. Sleeping in bushes and underneath bridges. I remember one particular evening I had crawled up under a bunch of bushes beside of a church. I was hoping that being on hallowed ground, it would protect me for the night at least. And so I'm laying there passed out, and something startles me, and I look up, and all I can see is his face looking at me. And I kind of jumped, and the guy kind of smiled, and I could just see white eyes and gums, no teeth. He just kind of smiled at me, and he nodded his head, and he went on to sleep. And I remember laying there, and I had my head leaning up against the brick wall, and I started crying. I was like, "What have you done?" Everything that you had, all the opportunities you had in your life, you've just thrown everything away. And of course that wasn't enough to stop me, but I remember when the sun came up the next morning, I started to crawl out from under the bushes, and I'm looking around, and there is all kinds of stuff. There's sleeping bags, there's pots and pans, dishes, food, and what I realized is I had basically crawled into that guy's home that night. Didn't know it was pitch black, and of course I was on the verge of passing out when I crawled in the bushes, but that's where that guy lived. And that kind of, it hit me for a short while. Exactly where my life was headed and what I was doing, but when you're here again, it wasn't enough to get me to stop. Spent another few days underneath the bridge, and finally had enough. So I called my father and I said, look, either you come get me or I'm just gonna walk out in traffic. I just can't continue doing what I'm doing. And he said, well, I'm glad to hear that. He said, but I'm not coming to get you. The only thing I can suggest that you do is call 911. And so that's what I did. And I ended up in the psych ward at Cape Fear Valley. And that was interesting too. Psych ward in Fayetteville. But I was in there for about a week, and they're telling me I suffer from clinical depression and blah, 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 this and that and this and that. Well, by that time, with the treatment centers I had gone to and so forth, I knew that I had more than just depression. But I ended up going to Samaritan Colony through an intervention put together between my parents and the folks that work down there. At this point in my life, I'm 46 years old, living at home with mom and dad, don't have a job, don't have a car, got absolutely nothing. And they were planning on going on a trip. They were going to be out of town for about 2 weeks, and they were not going to leave me at home in their house, which was very smart of them, because they'd probably come back with an empty house, kind of where I was headed at that point. But through a series of events, they tricked me pretty much into going to Samaritan Colony, and I fought and screamed and kicked like a baby. Called them every name in the book on the way down there. I remember when we pulled over the hill at Samaritan Colony, pulled down there, I told them they're making the biggest mistake of their lives and this and that. And of course, get out down there and slam the car door, and there's 10 or 12 guys sitting there getting ready to go inside and eat dinner, and I'm just pitching a fit, and they're all looking at me like, man, look at this dude, he's crazy. But which I was at that point. I was definitely insane. But went into Samaritan Colony, and things started changing the first few days, I guess. Started coming out of that fog. About 2 weeks into it, we had gone over the third step in treatment. And I was sitting up in front of the group of guys, and they asked me if I had made the decision. And I said yes, but I knew that I was lying. Because at that point I knew I hadn't made the decision to stop drinking or to do anything else, definitely not to turn my will of my life over to the care of God. That's just something I wasn't ready to do at that point. And the next morning, about 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm sitting out back by myself, and I'm kind of aggravated myself because I didn't have the nerve to tell these counselors that I didn't have that, that I didn't make that decision. That I'd lied to them. I didn't have the nerve to tell them that. And so I said to myself, well, there's no reason if you just stay here, you're just wasting space. You might as well go ahead and leave. And so my intentions were, once they came in that morning, I was going to go ahead and leave treatment. And at that point, something came over me, and I heard a voice that said, you can either make that decision now, or you can go ahead and leave and go back to doing what you're doing. And that's when I made the decision. I made the decision right there. 5 o'clock that morning, it's time. It's finally time. And so I guess that's the point I started to surrender. So I finished up treatment and learned a lot while I was down there, trying to figure out where I was going to go. I knew I needed to go to a halfway house somewhere, but I didn't want to go. I had tried that 2 or 3 times before, and it didn't work. And so they gave me the opportunity to stay down there on the property and just start helping out around the colony, and that's what I started doing. Once I finished treatment, here again, the treatment that I kicked and screamed going into, I ended up staying down there for 3 more months after I got out. And for me, that's what it took. It took that 3 months, and here again, just with the love of my parents and agreeing to kind of keep the bills up for me, pay the child support and so forth, I was able to do that. And so I stayed there for that 3 months, and that gave me the time I needed, kind of time for my brain to settle down and for me to, really make a decision to commit to this program. And that's what I did. This program has done so much for me in the last 2 years. It's truly amazing. I never could fathom the thought of going through a day without drinking alcohol. That's just something that I never could imagine doing. And so the 3 months, we end up going through that 3 months. I ended up moving up here to Southern Pines into a recovery house that the colony had going, and that was a true blessing. Next thing I know, I'm surrounded by 16 guys that are all in recovery. And here again, that's what it took for me. I know today I've got to keep myself surrounded 24/7 by people in recovery. That's the only way that I can make it. And so, well, I'm going through this awful quick. 7:30 and I'm almost done. I skipped a lot because here I told myself, and that's just it. I came in here with a plan and I knew I shouldn't have done that. Anytime I try to come up with a plan, it's the wrong one. And I told myself I wasn't really going to think about it. Now I was okay until about 3 o'clock this afternoon, and then of course my alcoholic brain took over, and all that self-centered fear kicked in, and I started worrying about what I was going to say, and don't remember any of it now. Don't remember what I had planned to talk about. But anyhow, keeping myself surrounded by people in recovery has been very can't even say the word. They're very important. How about that? I get up every morning and I do what I was taught to do. My sponsor told me that I need to get up every morning. I need to write a gratitude list. I need to spend some time with God. I need to do my spiritual readings. And that's what I do. I do that on a daily basis. Well, let me back up. I don't want to lie to y'all. This isn't an honest program. I do it most days. Probably the first year I did it every day religiously, and I might miss a day here and there, but pretty much I spend the time every morning with God. I go through my morning routine, and routine is something that I've definitely got to have. I remember hearing early on people talk about they were grateful alcoholics, and I couldn't understand that. Today I do. I'm grateful that I've got a program to follow. I'm grateful that I've got structure in my life, because without that, I'd be a mess. I wouldn't be here tonight, that's for sure. But that, the 12 steps have not just taught me how to not drink. Through the 12 steps and through you people, I've heard how to live life. And all the fear and anxiety that I've had my entire life has started to ease off. I've still got a lot of fears. The anxiety still goes through the roof at times, but on most days I can manage to get through it. I have no idea what to talk about now. I just blew right through everything. But anyhow, I guess we'll talk about getting sober. So, sobriety has been a true blessing for me. Those dark places that I ended up at caused a lot of harm to a lot of people. I remember being with my folks home one night, and I'm walking out the door to go do what I normally do, and my mother hollered at me. I stopped and turned around and looked at her, and she said, we've already made our peace with God. And I said, Mom, what are you talking about? She said, every time you walk out that door, we don't know if you're coming back. And if you don't come back tonight, it's okay. And I just wanted you to know that. And, that hurt at the time. Of course, it wasn't enough to keep me from heading out the door and go doing what I was doing. But, I remember that night thinking, boy, you're really hurting her. And I remember a couple months into sobriety, I'm over at her house and we're talking. She said, I sure am glad you're out of that deep, dark place that you used to be in. And that hit me hard then. I think that was the moment maybe I realized all the pain and everything that I had put them through. Just to hear her, or to know that maybe she somehow understood that, the person that was out there doing all those things was not me. That I was in a deep, dark place and just had no idea what to do about it. And I had no idea how to get out of it. That's just, it's something I hope I don't have to go through with my son. It's something that I hope I never have to witness as a parent. But, another thing this program has taught me is that, I can't control other people. Things are going to happen on a daily basis, and all I can do is just pray and hope for the best for him and for all situations. Some other things that the sobriety has given to me, I actually went back to school. And here again, I was talking about somebody being full of anxiety and being nervous growing up. Me sitting through a classroom is something that I never dreamed possible. And if all goes well, this May I'll graduate school from Sandhills with a 2-year degree. And, that's just another blessing that this sobriety has given me. I've got so many friends today that it's unbelievable. I've got people I can pick up the phone and call at any time, and I know they're going to be there. Steve was talking about helping other people. I enjoy helping other people. I've been fortunate enough that I also work at Samaritan Colony now, and I can't think of any other job that I could even imagine doing. I spent my entire life just taking everything I possibly could, and today I have the opportunity to give back. It gives me, I've got some peace in my life today, which is something else I never imagined that I would have. I remember one of my roommates was saying one night that he couldn't understand how I could come home and go straight to sleep every night, and that's the peace that this program's given me. I remember telling me one morning that he had timed me, and from the time I came in, crawled in bed, 2.5 minutes later I was snoring. And that's peace of mind right there. To come home and be sound asleep in 2.5 minutes when I used to lay in bed and just toss and turn for hours. This program just given me so much that I'll never be able to repay it. I don't know that I can ever express the gratitude that I've got for the program. It's just an amazing life today. And I got 20 more minutes. And, I didn't expect things to go this quick tonight, but anyhow, I am grateful. I'm grateful for the newcomers. I'm grateful for the gentleman back there, Alan, that showed up tonight. That's what this program is about. It's about us giving back as people come in. The first time I walked through those doors, there was people in here, that were here for me. And so, I feel an obligation to be here, to be in meetings as much as possible to help somebody else. I'm not just going to stand up here and ramble, and I've kind of gotten to that point. I know this is going to be cutting it awful early, but that's about all I got to say tonight. But I am grateful, and I do thank you.